All right. Happy Wednesday evening, everybody. I've got Steve Mutria on, and we are going to talk about Second Passover and potential prophetic significances of Second Passover. And we've already got a question from Senior Blondie. What is Second Passover? Somebody on Facebook put Second Passover question mark question mark. So Steve, I'm going to just let you roll with it, and then we'll go from there.
That sounds good. By the way, it's good being with you, brother. Long
You
time
too.
no see. So I guess, I've got several teachings on this topic. And one, our family celebrates second Passover. And for specific reasons. And I guess we can start there. Let me go ahead and pull the Bible verse up. It's in Numbers chapter 9. And I'll go ahead and just read it. This is 1 year out of Egypt. So 1 year has now passed. They're getting ready to celebrate Passover, excuse me. And so they spent this whole last 9 months from time of Shavuot now to Passover and making all the articles for the tabernacle, making everything making the tabernacle itself. Everything was being done during these 9 months. And then we come to first Passover out of Egypt, the first time they're actually going to celebrate Passover again in freedom. Okay, so this is where we're at. This is in Numbers chapter 9. And it says, but some of them could not celebrate the Passover on the day because they were ceremonially unclean on account of a dead body. Oh, by the way, forgive me. I am in Numbers 9, verse 5. So, and then it says, so they came to Moses and Aaron and that same day and said to Moses, we have become unclean because of a dead body. But why should we be kept from presenting the Lord's Passover on the other, with the other Israelites at the appointed time? Moses replied, he said, Moses answered them, wait until I find out what the Lord's commands are concerning you. At that point, we go to verse 9, and this is where it gets just, I think, it's the coolest thing ever, because he comes back with an answer, but comes back with really two answers. And it says this. It says, then the Lord said to Moses, tell the Israelites, when any of you or your descendants are unclean because of a dead body, and then it says, or away on a journey, they may still celebrate Yahweh's Passover. Verse 11, they are to celebrate it on the 14th day of the second month at twilight. And then it goes on right there. The exact same thing you do in the first month, you do in the second month. So this is what I think is the coolest thing, is these people were unclean because of a dead body. They touched a dead body, relative, who knows. Bottom line is they're saying, look, we're unclean. Moses comes back and says, not only can you celebrate Passover in the second month because you're unclean because of a dead body, but because if someone has been gone on a long journey and they missed the Passover, when they're back in time for second Passover, they can do it then. So that's the foundation for second Passover. And this is why my family does it every year. Now, our hope, because we're not in the land, that's why we do second Passover, because we let first Passover go by because we're not in the land, in hopes that we'll be in the land for second Passover, if you will. Now, when second Passover comes, well, that's our last opportunity. So then we observe it the best we can. And again, remember, this is remembering. We're not observing as far as obedience, because you can't do that. You can't appear before Yahweh. And so that gets a whole other ball game there. But we're doing our best to remember it because we want to. That's our desire, to obey him in everything that we can. So that's the foundation for second Passover. You have any thoughts or things you want to add in before I continue on?
Some people may not have been aware of that passage, obviously by the questions, and it was sort of like a do-over for individuals who, like you said, Mama had passed away, and a couple of days before Passover, and they had to handle their mom's dead corpse or their dad or whatever, and so and then like you said, he just sort of adds this next one. I think the adding part is more prophetic, and that's what we're going to get into. With how the timing of the fall feast and the 7 months in Ezekiel, I think it's 38 or 39, may factor into how a future second Passover may be celebrated for the first time in the kingdom, Would that be correct? Am I summarizing it?
Say that one more time.
In other words, that this would be after, in other words, after the Gog Magog war, and there are people on a journey. There's a greater second Exodus during this time period, or either they're already in the land and they're doing some major cleanup of dead bodies for a period of 7 months.
That's it.
And so they're unclean in what would be month 1, Nisan. So they have to observe second Passover, and it would be the first year in the land being able to observe Passover. And I believe Yeshua, Yahweh, will be present.
Correct. Well, and it's Ezekiel 38:39, Gog Magog war, like you said. It says they'll be cleaning the dead bodies for 7 months. Now, if I'm correct, and I get it, there's lots of theories out there, so I'm not here to say I'm right on this or whatever, but I really lean to the Battle of Armageddon, which I call Harmoed, either taking place on one of 2 days, either that of the Day of Atonement or the last day of Sukkot. I keep going back and forth between those two. I don't know why, but it's always, I keep going back, like I said, between those two. But I always come back to leaning more and more to the last day of Sukkot. Okay. And so, but let's just say it's right in that time frame either way. Could be the first day of Sukkot for all we know. Okay, let's just say it's right in that time frame. Well, then they clean the dead bodies for how long?
7 months.
7 months. Okay, so then that means they're going to go past, because 6th month from that time frame is going to normally land you right upon first Passover. But they can't, because why? Either those in the land are cleaning the dead bodies for 7 months, so they're unclean in the 6th month still. And like you said, you have those who are gone on the long journey, the second Exodus, which I have a teaching simply titled The Second Exodus, which explained the survivors of the tribulation. At that point, they begin their journey back to the land, and then they don't make it back until when? Well, they're obviously, most of them, maybe not all of them, but the grand majority of them will still be traveling during the time of first Passover, which Yahweh gives a provision then that it'll be second Passover they can observe. So I firmly believe, wrong or right, ask me tomorrow, I may change my mind, but I doubt it, because I've been this way for a long time on this, so it's going to take a lot to convince me otherwise. I believe when Yeshua says at the Last Supper, that he will not partake of this wine again until, I really believe it's going to be a second Passover when all of us are gathered together with him. It'll be second Passover, not first.
And just briefly on the topic of when the day would happen, I probably would lean toward Yom Kippurim or Day of Atonement. And the reason being is because the birds are feasting, the vultures and the carrion birds are feasting on the dead people. I believe that's going to be happening at the same time that the wedding feast is going on. It's sort of like there's a good feast and there's a feast you don't want to be part of. You don't want to be dinner. You would rather be participating in the meal as opposed to being the meal. So that would be why we might be 12 days apart there.
Yeah.
Now we need to throw down on that and divide, Steve. And
well, it's funny because I have no problem agreeing to disagree with anybody, but I always like to bring points out, because with what you just said, I agree. However, that same argument can be made for the last day of Sukkot, because it's the last great day. It's the feast day. It's even considered the last great day. So that same argument that you bring forth could apply for the last great day just the same. In fact, forgive me for trying to pin you in a corner, but the Day of Atonement, that's considered a day of affliction, not a day of fasting, or feasting. I'm sorry.
Right.
And so that would be the one, thought I would say that kind of would struggle with that. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying as far as, when the birds feast, like you said.
Oh, no, I was saying the feast would be during Sukkot. In other words, Armageddon or Harmageddon or however we want to pronounce the word. I believe that might kick off at Yom Kippurim or how it's going to work out, I don't know. Like I said, I have multiple opinions, and I always bounce around and going, okay, I like that, but I think I'm wrong here, and then I go, oh, well, maybe I'm not. You know what I'm saying? And so that's why I leave all my other teachings up still. Sort of off topic, but I'm going to put up a comment real quick. As a Gentile believer, what feast are we allowed to participate in? And I would say Senior Blondie and I don't know if this is. I don't know. I'm assuming Senior. It's a gentleman. So, but that's an oxymoron. There is no such thing as a open quote Gentile close quote believer. When you enter into covenant, you are formerly of the nations. Now, by flesh, you may be an American or European or African or Asian, but upon you entering covenant, placing your faith in Yeshua, you are no longer excluded from those covenants of promise. They're yours. You're no longer without hope. And you are no longer excluded as a citizen of Israel. You are now a full-blown, not a spiritual citizen. You're flesh and blood. You just living in exile, just like Daniel at the time of Babylon. Anything to add on that, Steve? You were shaking your head. Yes.
I'm right there with you. In fact, I completely agree. And to confirm the idea even more, you go to the New Jerusalem in Revelation 21. How many gates are there? There's 12. For the who? The 12 tribes. There is no Gentile gate. You're either grafted into Israel, one of the 12 tribes, or you're not getting in. And so, like I said, there is no Gentile gate. And we have multiple teachings on that too. One is grafted in. There's multiple ones we have on that. So for everything you just said, completely agree.
And I would love for you to look at the script I'm writing. AOC Network is going to produce a movie on, I don't have the title yet, but who is Israel grafted in, no longer excluded from Israel, but Ephesians 2, Romans 11, Ezekiel 47, looking in the future, Ezekiel 37. And so that's sort of going to be the topic. If I think if more and more Christians would understand that they're Israelites and there's not this new entity called the church, then all of a sudden the front of the book starts making a lot more sense.
Exactly. We realize there's not an Old and New Testament. There's just one Testament.
Yeah.
You know,
there's the older Hebrew scripture, old time, and
right.
There's more recent scripture ending with Revelation. But Genesis 1 to Revelation 22, it's one book, one story. It's his story. So,
right. Amen.
So anyway, and that's anyway, Steve, wherever you want to pick up back in and rock and roll.
Yeah, for those who are questioning second Passover, what is it and stuff, I have two teachings. Well, one, I have three teachings. One is this second Passover, why we observe it. And then we have two teachings simply titled Second Passover and the Coming Storm, and then Second Passover and the Coming Storm Addendum. The first one was done actually in Oregon. It was done as a fellowship there, live presentation. And then as I kept studying it afterwards, I'm going, oh my gosh, there's just so much more to this. And so I ended up making an in-studio addendum to that teaching. I would suggest you can watch, it doesn't matter actually, you can watch either one first, but they both are packed with why we should be considering second Passover as to the season as to when things could begin. And man, I'm telling you, there's just so much. In fact, go ahead.
I was just going to, it is interesting that people went cray-cray over the eclipse. I do believe it could very well be, and probably is, a prophetic sign, maybe a warning. You've got the 40 days, and I think it was on April 7th. So what's that going to be, May 17th?
May 18th, 19th. You got up to 40 days consume, be done, and then you go to the 41st day. That's when it would be done. However, I got a thought on that, if I can interrupt you for real quick.
Sure.
I was just talking with my friend. I got a friend in Canada. We talk all the time, and we were dissecting Jonah. And we came to the conclusion it wasn't 40 days. It was 44 days, because he came into the land. Okay. And then it says it's a great city. It takes 3 days to go through all of it. And so it's almost as if he went through witnessing all of it first. And then on that fourth day, he starts proclaiming it, what's going to happen. And so in essence, there's 44 days from the sign, if you will. And
and Passover this year.
I'm sorry?
When is second Passover? What date?
The 44th day after the eclipse.
So my twins' birthday is on the 17th. They can turn 19, hopefully, with nothing. I like to say before all heaven breaks loose.
There you go. That's good.
And everybody wants to say about all hell breaks loose, and yeah, it's not going to be pleasant. But guess who is allowing it and permitting it to bring
Correct.
people to repentance?
Yep.
I mean, especially in the West right now, a lot of people, get a little COVID scare. Everybody's kind of rock and rolled and got, groceries are a little bit up, and that stinks for a lot of people. It stinks for me too.
Yep.
But we ain't seen nothing yet. Once it starts getting biblical up in here.
Correct. Yep. I'm right there with you. Yeah, there's just so much. Let's go back to Bible element. We can get in time things and as far as current events in the middle bit, because there's plenty of them. But, one more reason, and I bring this out in one of the teachings, I think it's in the addendum, is something a lot of people don't understand. And I'm not saying I do, but I think I've got at least something of an idea how to work with it. First, we know Yeshua says if those days were not cut short, no one would survive. And a lot of people struggle with, well, how is it cut short? It says it's 1,260, time times half a times, all these dates and numbers given to us. So how does that happen? And a lot of times people will just stick to those numbers and not even consider the element that it's cut short. Okay. And I get it. And I'm still not saying I have all the answers for it. However, there are reasons to understand that it can be cut short biblically, prophetically from the prophets, just the same. And that's what Yeshua is referring to. In fact, I don't know if I have the verse in front of me here. Yes, I do. Forgive me. It's Daniel 12, verse 7. It says, the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, lifted his right hand and his left hand toward heaven. And I heard him swear by him who lives forever, saying, it will be for a time, times and a half a time, when the power of the holy people has been finally broken, all these things will be completed. Now, this is a time, times and a half a time you always hear people talk about. However, this particular time, times and a half a times mentioned in Daniel 12 does not say like it is with the other ones. It actually says Moed, Moedim, Chatzi. Now, those of you who study Hebrew will know the Moed are the appointed times. So he's telling Daniel it'll be 3.5 Moed and it's done. 3.5 Moed. That cuts us down to under 6 months, or at least within that time frame. And that goes into my theory of, the tribulation being a year or less.
And we actually, you're one of the few people that might agree with me that Moed, Moedim, or in the Greek, where I believe John is obviously what we have is the Greek right now. It'd be the same word for Moed, the appointed times. Where we would differ is I see this unfolding, this Moedim unfolding over the last, I guess, starting in Passover, ending in with the fall feast, sort of as the trumpets are rolling out. In other words, I think the trumpets are going to be in the last, maybe the last 6-7 months of this age. So similar to you, I just have a 3-year period, that we're not dogmatic on the 1260, the 42 months. I believe the time is cut short because he changed his time again. Mm-hmm. I believe we go back to a 360-day calendar.
Well, I agree with that.
Yeah. So, and it's going to freak people out if however God chooses to change time,
right,
and make it a 360-day year again after he whacked it out at the time of Hezekiah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and he even mentions it in Revelation, forgive me. It's Matthew 24. It's around verse 30-ish. And I don't have it in front of me, but basically says how the heavenly bodies will be shaken. Well, what's the heavenly bodies? Sun, moon, and stars. They're all going to be vibrated. Everything's going to be vibrated back into position for that perfect solar calendar all over again. And I say solar, it's just, the heavenly mechanics will be all, in other words, the clock is set. It's recalibrated to the perfect timepiece, and I really think that's what that's discussing.
Yeah, and that's why I don't really do calendar wars or big time calendar divisions with people, because, again, I think the Zadok priesthood or the Essenes, I think they were trying their best to fit a square 365.25 day year into a 360-degree perfect circle.
Mm-hmm.
And they did the best they could. But now you've got so many people following this sect of Judaism, essentially. And there's really no biblical basis to determine that there's a 364-day year, because there's not.
Right.
You've got to do a leap year anyway, no matter how you do it. It's just,
yeah.
So, hey, I'm going to show this comment real quick. It's off topic, but what happens to us as believers if the third temple is built? Steve and I might be one of the few people that believe that Isaiah 66, the first few verses, Yah is not going to be happy with this. Read those first few verses, everybody. Anybody that thinks that this temple is going to be blessed, and a lot of people read Daniel 9:27 and they'll go, he's going to commit the abomination. He's going to put it into the sacrifices. Well, those sacrifices were not acceptable for 40 years, according to the hostile witness of the Talmud, in which you have 3 miracles recorded. And a hostile witness is extra biblical, but a hostile witness is a great witness to actually show that there was this time period after Yeshua after he resurrected and ascended, that Yah was not happy. He was not accepting those sacrifices anymore.
Well, I think more than anything is to focus, like you mentioned, and I complete agreement on Isaiah 66. I have multiple teachings on that element. In fact, you can go to, I have the one teaching is the image of the beast. That one is all about the Ark of the Covenant being the image of the beast. As people freak out when I say that, when you look at the teaching, there's elements of truth to this, that we can't ignore. Again, it's called the image of the beast. And then the return of the tent. That is one. The people are always talking about how we're going to have a third temple. Okay, I believe there's going to be plans for that, and they may even start trying to build it. But the tent of meeting, the original tent of meeting, will be what stands in the end times, during the tribulation time. They will get that established, because it'll come out with the Ark of the Covenant. And I have another teaching, what is the idol of jealousy? That is an important teaching. I wish more people would look at this. It's called What is the Idol of Jealousy? And it all discusses the Ark of the Covenant and how it will all be set up in the tent of meeting on the existing Temple Mount. It'll be on the north side. And there's a big clearing. I've been to Jerusalem. I've been there. I've seen it. There's a massive clearing on the north side. And Ezekiel talks about that exact clearing by the north gate.
Is that where the threshing floor is right now? There is it's not the dome with the rock. It's like a little gazebo built on it.
No, that's different. Where is that? I want to say that's on the east side.
It is. It faces the east gate, actually.
Okay, yeah, okay, then that makes sense. Yeah. So that's not the same location. The whole north side of that Temple Mount is all cleared easily. They could easily set up the tent of meeting with the Ark of the Covenant all there, while they begin trying to work and establish the actual building of the tabernacle, the temple itself, where it belongs. And so, it's a teaching I wish everyone would watch. It's a teaching I think would challenge us.
Do you believe that when Judah, and I say when, or perhaps there's some future leader, when they set this up, do you believe that would be the abomination if there's an individual or a person also declaring to be God? Or how do you factor that in with 2 Thessalonians, chapter 2 and Matthew 24? And I think Yeshua is referring to Daniel 12, not Daniel 9. I think Ribera did a wonderful job infiltrating the Protestant protesting daughter churches. And now you've got 95% who have just bought that 70th week futurism, hook, line, and sinker. And once you're indoctrinated into something, it's hard to unlearn it. I mean, I know I was for years.
Right. It's in Daniel 12. I want to read it real quick. Let me get there real quick. It's where he mentions the 90 days, which no one wants to touch that one with a 10-foot pole. But I've covered it in several different teachings. It says, from the time the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination that causes desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. Now, first, the word set up It's only one Hebrew word. So I think it's Natan is how you pronounce it. The word is actually given. So if we read it, we present it in a way when we read it, like, okay, this is done and then this is done. But it's actually given in reverse order. Let me say it this way. From the time the daily sacrifice is abolished, that's when Yeshua comes in and cleans house at the end of it all. Okay. In fact, we all know about how Yeshua comes from the east. He splits the Mount of Olives and he comes into Jerusalem. That is when, and remember, it says he got blood on him already. Why does he have blood on him? Because he just fought the battle of Armageddon back at Mount Sinai. So he's got blood all over him. And now he's coming what? He's coming into home. He's going to clear house of what's going on at the temple right now. Okay. So he comes in, he begins to clean house. That's the day the daily sacrifices are abolished. And then so that's the end. It says, so between that time and when the abomination that causes desolation is given, not set up, but given, there's this many days. So when we look at the abomination that causes desolation and it's given, to me, that's going to be all about the Ark of the Covenant. In fact, if you go to see the first or second Maccabees chapter, oh man, I can't even think of the chapter now, maybe chapter 1 or 2, and you read about Jeremiah, he's hiding the ark and all the tabernacle and everything with it. Somebody tried marking the way, and Jeremiah gets mad. He goes, what are you doing? This shall remain hidden until the time when Yahweh brings all of his people back together. So now, if you don't accept first or second Maccabees, I get it. However, this is a historical account that Jeremiah said this is what's going to happen. And so, to me, when the Ark of the Covenant comes out, you can start counting days because it's wrapping up now. And in fact, a friend of mine just sent me an article saying everyone's talking about the red heifer sacrifice, and yeah, sure, one day it's going to. They said, but when the Ark comes out, that's when it really begins. And people are starting to talk and think about the Ark of the Covenant again. And when it comes out, I'm telling you, it's going to stir a massive stir all around the world.
And to your point, yes, Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon carried out a lot of the things that were in the temple.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as you would think that some of the pieces would have been hidden, just like the ark was hidden, because there's no record of the ark being carried off. So
correct, yeah. And if you're ever interested, you can go to the copperscrollproject.com. Jim Barfield has done a lot of research there and showing where they know where the ark is. And Israel, the Temple Institute, they know where it's at, even because of Jim, because he's went to them. There's so many things I could tell you about that. It's crazy.
Yeah. We had him on about a month and a half ago to talk about it. He had just come back from Israel, and I was like, okay, did you find it? He said, even if we did, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
He said, but they did what? He said, but we weren't able to dig. So so another sort of off-topic thing, but this is something that is gaining in popularity. That it seems like I'm hearing more of this little season period that we may be living after the Great Tribulation. What do you guys think? And I'm gonna start out. I'm gonna be nice and just say I think it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's not a salvation issue. It's not an issue to divide over. It's not an issue to throw down. But it's almost as, I think it's in the ballpark of amillennialism or post-millennial, that we're going to like take over the world for Jesus before he can come back, or there is no literal reign and everything is spiritualized away. And really, to believe this, you've got to jump into the conspiracy theory pool, go to the center, into the vortex, and get sucked down to Never Land in order to believe this, generally speaking. And I've got some friends that believe this, and I like them, and we're friends. But I would tell them, I think on this issue, you're a little
Well, here's the thing. First, if we're saying that we're in that season of Satan being loosed, okay, because that's what they're saying. We're past the millennial age, and now we're in that short season of Satan being loosed on the earth. Okay, that's their theory. Here's the problem. If that's true, then Hosea is a false prophet. Hosea chapter 2 discusses the new covenant. I don't have it in front of me. And matter of fact, let me find it real quick. This is Hosea chapter 2, verse 16. In that day declares Yahweh, you will call me my husband. You will no longer call me my master. I will remove the names of the Baals from her lips. No longer will their names be invoked. Now listen, this is verse 18 now. In that day I will make a covenant for them with the beasts of the field and the birds of the air and the creatures that move along the ground. Listen, bow and sword and battle I will abolish from the land, so that all may may lie down in safety. So
Yeah.
here he is saying, from the time he makes the new covenant, which is at the beginning, or at the beginning of the tribulation, or at the end of the tribulation, however you want to say it, doesn't matter to me. Bottom line is, on this part, long before the millennium begins, the new covenant is established. And in that new covenant, he says, I am banishing bow, sword, war, ain't going to happen. In fact, that's why you see at the end of the millennium and after the time of Satan being loosed, it says they all come against Jerusalem, right? Satan gathers them all together for what? For a war. Does a war happen?
Nope.
No. Why? Because of this very prophecy. What happens? Fire comes down and devours them all. Yahweh keeps his covenant. He banishes war, period. He just wipes them out.
Well,
So,
and not only Hosea too, Steve, but Zechariah, Isaiah. I mean, if I did a little research on it, I could find multiple witnesses from the prophets that talk about there will be no war, there will be peace.
right.
I think war. The nations are going to gather against the house of Judah and the house of David, and Judah corporately, I believe, calls out, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of Yah," and Yeshua saves the day, and Judah, the spirit of grace and supplication is poured out on Judah, and then all Israel is saved.
Yeah.
From Romans 11.
Right.
The last of the nations are coming in, as this is happening too, into the kingdom, and then Judah cries out, and then we're all, that new covenant is fully implemented.
Correct.
It's not just on the books; it's recognized.
Yes.
Realized. Right
Yep.
now, we have the pledge, we have the promise, to use an accounting term, and I mix them up. One, realize means you got it. Recognize means it's on the book. Right now, the new covenant is recognized, but it's not fully realized yet because I still sin. You still sin. Everybody watching this, and if you don't think you sin, you've got a pride problem. So.
Right. Well, and don't forget, with the new covenant, it says that, in Jeremiah, neither will they tell their neighbor or their brother, know the Lord. Well, what was the last command that Yeshua gave to his disciples in Matthew 28? Go and tell all nations, make disciples. So that in itself showed we weren't in the new covenant then. The new covenant comes, think of it this way. The first covenant was done at Mount Sinai. And what did they say? Here's the covenant. And they said, we will. It's marriage language. What are we waiting for? And my theory is, when Yeshua comes for his bride, he takes his bride where? To Mount Sinai. He makes known the end from the beginning, ancient times what's still to come. So it's going to happen again. And but again, we're waiting for that new covenant, the marriage covenant.
We're to use the Hebrew wedding model, and we're in the betrothal process. We are legally already married, just as Mary was to Joseph, and that's why it would have been adultery. In other words, we're betrothed, but Yeshua has went to his Father's house to prepare a place from us. That is not a rapture passage. That is bridal talk. That is him in the ancient Hebrew wedding model going to prepare this place for us. And then he's bringing heaven to earth. We're not going to go out into, the outer space heavens, or within the dome. I'm going to give my biblical cosmologist friends credit. We're not going up there. He's bringing heaven to earth. New Jerusalem's coming here.
Right.
So
yeah.
So and it's just amazing. I want to be nice, but so many prophecy teachers don't factor in the Moedim, and if they're not teaching prophecy based on the Moedim, even if they're wrong, okay, like Curtis Reed, my good friend Michael, they would differ with you. hey, they're centered around the Moedim. You're centered around the Moedim. Others are at least we're using his appointed times to try to understand when prophetic events will happen versus it could just happen tomorrow.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, and on that, Mark, back to the time times half a time, the 3 Moedim. If I can show you, and I know you say it's like this the last of the 3.5 years, where I differ with that, of course. But either way, when you look at the last 3.5 Moedim, well, let's go under the assumption that I'm right. And again, I say assumption that the Battle of Moed, Armageddon, happens on the last day of Sukkot. That being said, when we look at what Daniel said, it's for time times half time, Moed, Moedim, and a half. That's 3.5. Working our way backwards. You got Sukkot at the end. You've got Day of Atonement and trumpets. There's your 3. Well, what's the next one? Well, it's Shavuot. It's in the midst of the 50 of the counting of the 50 days. So ironically, it's like I have here, second Passover this year falls literally on the 25th day of the 50-day count to Shavuot, right in the middle. And for what it's worth, second Passover always falls within that middle week. It just so happens this year it falls literally on the middle day, 25th day of the 50-day counting. And now here's something else I want to add in. Again, speaking about appointed times and how Yahweh always works in his appointed, he always does. Yeshua died on Passover, in the grave at first unleavened bread, rose on first fruits, Holy Spirit, deposit of the Holy Spirit came on when? Shavuot. So he always works with the holy days. We can't just throw them to the side. Here's something I find interesting. Yeshua likens the end times to the days of Noah. Well, what happened in the days of Noah? We know it rained for 40 days, but the rains covered the earth for a total of 150 days. Now, that being said, we have in Revelation 9, where it says the creatures out of the abyss are released for what? 5 months, which happens to be 150 days, 30-day perfect calendar days.
Additional proof, I believe, he changes it back to the perfect system.
Right. Well, check this out. This year, it just so happens that from the first day of second unleavened bread, there is exactly 150 days to the first day of Sukkot this year. So these are things. Now, I grant it, I have seen lots of parallels over the years, lots. But when I see them, all I can do is go, I got to mark this down and watch it, because this is the time of the year I always watch. And when I see these kind of things work in perfect alignment, all the more I want to watch.
And that's what I like about your teachings and your ministry, as far as how you handle this without being 100% dogmatic, without coming out and going, "This is it, everybody, it's happening." And again, like Rock Island Books, bless his heart, he's understanding now the Moedim. The rapture is happening on Feast of Trumpets 2024 because he's also really started to understand the 7-day redemptive plan. So he's understanding all this, but again, he can't unlearn the fact that the ecclesia is not new. It was in the wilderness because the ecclesia is Israel. And again, Senor Blondie, the reason you are to keep this is because you are no longer a pagan. You are no longer a heathen. If you would actually, I'm not being mean, but do a word study on the Greek word ethnos and then start looking at your American translations. And I think it's 1 Corinthians or 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 2 or 10, verse 2. It's like you were former pagans, and they'll change the word there. The English translation is we can't call them former Gentiles. This is going to confuse people. We can't be calling them that. And so our English translators, due to their translation bias, I'm not saying it's intentional, they've got you blinded to the truth that you are an Israelite. And then when you read that, Israel shall keep these feasts. Now, we cannot do them, as Steve mentioned earlier. We cannot go to Jerusalem right now and appear before Yah at the temple.
Because we can isn't there.
Yeah, we can at least honor and observe these, as opposed to Ishtar Day and the Mass of Christ and St. Patty's Day and All Hallows Eve and Valentine's Day and all these other pagan feasts that Rome mixed in with truth. And again, Christianity is it might as well scream House of Israel, Jeroboam. I mean,
right,
okay,
right.
what are we gonna do? We're gonna do some idols. We're gonna have our own priesthood, and we're gonna make our own feast days. Roman Catholicism says hi, and that's exactly. I mean, the olive has not fallen far from the wild olive pit tree. You know,
Right, right.
yeah.
For what it's worth, too, on this topic you bring in, how the ecclesia has always been. I have a teaching. Who are you talking to? Blondie? I forgot.
Senior Blondie. He's
Blondie.
Yeah.
Okay, hopefully he's still there. I have a teaching on that topic, what he's mentioning here, and it's called The Assembly. And you can actually, if you want, you can go to torahfamily.org, and if you go to all of our teachings tab, it'll be Faith Foundations. You go to the Faith Foundations tab. I have tons of teachings on all these kind of topics, but you scroll down a little while, and you'll find the teaching simply titled The Assembly. And it shows how even Stephen, whenever he gave his, in fact, Stephen's speech, if you will, was the longest speech or sermon given. Yeah. Stephen presents how it was the assembly, the ecclesia, that was in the wilderness with Moses. He uses that exact same word that we always use for church, the rest of the scripture.
And I will give King James Version credit. They at least were consistent. The newer translations... Now I hate the fact that they translated it as Gentiles as opposed to nations, but or pagan or heathen. But the newer translations will alter that. Like in Acts 7, you'll see congregation or assembly. You won't say church because we can't have New Testament, church believers who aren't Israel believing that the church was actually in the wilderness. We've got to change that word to reflect, the bias. So again, if more. And Christians just aren't taught. Even pastors aren't taught this, Steve. They go to cemetery school and they get indoctrinated into we're the Gentile New Testament church, and then they teach their congregation, and it's just. But the good news, everybody, is millions around the world are having eyes to see and ears to hear this, and we talked about this. I won't go into any details, but the problem is. There are some Looney Tune teachers out there, without naming names, that's my concern as more and more in Christianity are starting to come out. That they then hear a teacher that's talking about the Moedim and honoring Shabbat, and then next thing you know, they're in bizarro world, and so that's my prayer is more people would find teachers like yourself. I actually said a prayer it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. I was like, time is short. I know I can sit here and the Holy Spirit will teach me. I don't need a teacher, but I asked God, I said, would you please lead me to some people that are solid and not crazy and that have really been studying this? And then the next morning, Judy Gallagher, a Facebook friend from Canada, a little old lady, she goes, have you ever heard of Bill Cloud and Halisa Elwine? Who are pretty, I mean, again, I don't agree with them on everything, but they're solid.
Right.
They were doing this in the 90s when this was not cool at all.
Right, exactly.
Halisa was seeing this when she was a teenager. Wait a minute. We're supposed to be keeping Shabbat. Why, Mama, why are we not going? Why aren't we going to church on Sunday? And others. And then I believe y'all led me to Curtis Reed and to Michael Oman and Olive Branch and to you and 119 Ministries was very helpful for me back in 2018 as I was fleshing this out. And so I avoided some of the cray-cray stuff that's out there without naming names tonight.
No, I'm right there with you. It's funny because back to second Passover, a story that gets omitted, not on purpose, but just we don't think about the importance of it, is 2 Chronicles chapter 30 with Hezekiah. And Hezekiah is trying to bring unity with the northern and southern kingdom. And so it's in 2 Chronicles chapter 30. I don't want to read it for sake of time, but you can go there, 2 Chronicles 30, and you see him wanting to bring the two kingdoms back together. And he uses second Passover. And he calls for them, says, guys, come back. Let's do this. We can do this for the Lord. We observe it all together. We'll be back together. And it's sad because in that story, the grand majority of the northern kingdom mocked at him. and said we want nothing to do with it. In fact, there's only 3 tribes. Yeah, we're not even all the men of that tribes, but just a scattered few from those tribes came back and observed second Passover.
And again, and I will name a name here because it's interesting you brought this up. This was not part of, I didn't have this plan, but, and I do like Joel Richardson, obviously with him. He still sees only Jews as Israel and the church as the church. So he's still got some, I'm just going to call it dispensational baggage hanging around. He's got some carry-on. Now, he has some luggage in that respect. It's not just a few carry-on bags. But, and he argues, and Chuck Missler, who I really like Chuck Missler. I never met him personally, and I haven't met Joel. But they want to say that that was when the kingdom got united. And I'm like, Zechariah wrote after that, and he begs to differ. Ezekiel's writing in the same time period or later. He begs to differ, not to mention Kings is a compilation and records numerous times that Israel is still there, scattered in Assyria, ancient Assyrian Empire, to this day. I think it says it like 3-4 times. Chronicles does record that when Jeroboam went apostate, the Levites moved down south, and many, it says that it doesn't give a number, it just says some of the northern kingdom that didn't want to participate in Jeroboam's apostate system did migrate south. They then became known as Jews. But the two kingdoms never came together. The two trees have not become one yet. We still have Christianity and Judaism, and that's where I'm going to be doing a sort of a rebuttal video to Joel's teaching on that. And I'm going to start doing things like that as far as some of this is take their videos, go and say, okay, well, here's what this brother is saying, but let's look at these other passages that they've ignored, or let's, because that's what people do, and I'm guilty of it too, Steve. You're a lawyer. You focus on your strong points and you minimize your weak points. Right.
Well, and to your point, though, like you said, let's look at what this brother is saying. So you consider him a brother. That's important, because a lot of people they'll just condemn others, and it's like it's so sad. But ironically enough, you bring up Joel Richardson because I used to be his video editor and videographer a long time ago, and so it's but.
And he's a good guy. Chuck Missler just seemed like I'm assuming he didn't fake it. That his personality, what you saw in his teachings, is what you got. An intelligent man, ahead of his time on this Nephilim and transhumanism. He was seeing things that people thought he was crazy back in the day. That now they're going like, this is not science fiction anymore. It's happening.
Yep. Well, and Joel's the same way. Joel's an awesome guy. I know Joel. Haven't talked to him in a while, but I'll tell you right now, he is a great and awesome guy. He loves the Lord, and we differ on different things here and there, but awesome dude. But back to Hezekiah, what I find interestingly enough is how just after Hezekiah does this call for second Passover, inviting the northern kingdom come back, it wasn't but months later, if even that long, that Assyria came in and destroyed the northern kingdom. Took them all off to and banished them. And I'm thinking, man, it's almost as if that second Passover was their last opportunity to come back. And they laughed and they mocked it.
They mocked and they scoffed and they missed it. And as a result, the divorce was final. I believe that's when Jeremiah 3 is referring to. That's when they received their certificate of divorce.
Yep.
They were invited. And you know what? Some of those people from Ephraim or those tribes may have actually decided to renew their covenant, but it does not mean that the two kingdoms ever united, the two sticks, the two eights, the two trees. I wish it was the two tree prophecy. I just don't think that the translators can envision the prophet holding 2 olive trees in his hand.
Right.
People can't hold trees. They got to be little bitty trees. But eights is translated trees a lot more than it is sticks. And I believe translated as trees, then you see Zechariah 4, Romans 11, Jeremiah 11, 16, and 17. And these are the passages in the Israel movie that I'm writing the script for. And I'm going to try to do it in a palatable presentation manner as opposed to, you must believe this. Just. So I'm going to need your help and others helps doing that because it's not forceful sometimes.
Well, and back to this second Passover element, it's like when you look at what Yahweh did for his people coming out of Egypt, it started when? On Passover, first Passover. And I think the same will apply when his people come out of Babylon. It'll be second Passover. First one was for what? The first covenant. That he, he's now wanting to do what? The second covenant. I think it will start at the second Passover. The same principle was all there. In fact, there's so many things. The two teachings that I mentioned earlier, the second Passover and the coming storm, and then that and the addendum. There's so much in those teachings. I hope and pray people get a chance to check them out, because it will show you that there's a good, plausible case for us to be watching this time frame, especially right now. And brother, I know you're on the 3.5 year time frame, and I'm still praying for you on that, by the way. But that's okay.
Hey, I am perfectly fine with it being cut short, dude.
Yeah, I'm with you, right? Exactly.
I mean, if it's 6 months or a year, trust me, I'm not going to be complaining. And for anybody, Steve and I did a show in the past where we actually discussed this topic. And I can actually see and agree with Steve that there actually could be a harpazo similar to how Philip was harpazo, and Paul, or a guy he knew, whether in body or spirit, he did not know, was harpazo. So I believe there can be a harpazo, a snatching away of not everybody that's a believer, but only a select few. And I'm not saying I make the cut by any means whatsoever. And,
right.
And this protection, this. So again, that's so many people have talked about the rapture based on 1 Thessalonians 4:17, and the word is not even harpazo. It's I can't pronounce it, guys, but it's harpage, samitha, harpage, samatha.
It's a variation.
So anyway,
well, here's the thing too, though, if I can add this in.
Sure.
If we go in under the element of he makes known the end from the beginning, ancient times were still to come. Because while I believe in what some would call a pre-trib resurrection, I still believe we go through something before that happens. And now how it's going to play out, I don't know. I have multiple teachings covering this, but when I look at the element of what's he given to his people in Revelation, you also read it in Jeremiah, I think 50:51, where it's showing what's going to be happening. He calls to the people, come out of her, my people. Okay, so there's a call to what? Leave. Now where are we going? I don't know. Okay, I'm just simply saying go. Okay, and I think when that time comes, he'll quicken our hearts and we'll know where to go or what to do. I'm sorry?
I said, I think we will definitely know, and it could be the 144,000, and they could be the leaders, sort of like the 1,000 from each tribe in the battle in Numbers, in which not one man is missing. That's supernatural protection. That is a ceiling, because you didn't go to war back in the day, and be fighting and not have a random arrow hit you in the heart or in the middle of the eye and take your
right.
brain. Or you're fighting one guy and some guy that's not really good at battle comes and runs you in from the back,
Right.
To not lose one person. So I see that as a shadow of the 144.
It could be. It's a divine protection for sure. But my point is when you look at what happened with the first Passover out of Egypt, it was the first day of unleavened bread when what? They were out of Egypt. They all left. He calls them out. And so it's almost as if there could be a parallel within this. We could see the Father starts calling his people, come out. In fact, if you look at the parable of the 10 virgins, what's the wake-up call? Here comes the bridegroom, come out to meet him. There's something we have to do to go. And I can't think of the exact verse now, but Yeshua says, when you see the Son of Man, flee. If you're on top of the roof, don't go back down. Go. If you're out in the field, don't go back to the house. Go. So there's a point of where we have to do our own physical going, okay, like this, before the resurrection ever happens, before there's even what you would call a harpazo, like if you would call. To me, there's something that we have to make that choice to leave the world behind. And I think there's something with that. Now, I don't have all the ins and outs, all the answers to it, but there's something with that. Yeshua wouldn't have said that. If we were just all going to be taken in a second, he would say, if you're on top of the roof, don't worry about it, I'll come and get you. He didn't say that. He goes, if you see the sign of the Son of Man, go. Yeah, so there's something on our part that we have to do to flee. And that's why I'm not convinced. So when I say pre-tribulation rapture, it's not the way everyone else's, the regular church is holding to. No, I believe that we will have to go through something. We'll have to exit something. There's something on our part we have to do, and I think as that time comes, we're going to know.
Let me ask you this, because I had a discussion with the brother Nathan Harmon, and he got to put Gilead, the ancient area of Gilead, on his heart. And he, I'd seen the passage, but it talks about Ephraim and Judah, and in Gilead, there not even being enough room. I think it's Zechariah chapter 8. One of the last times Ephraim is mentioned in the book of Zechariah. After chapter 10, it's just like, where in the heck did Ephraim and Joseph go? Where's the house of Israel? It's all Judah centric. After that, I think that is my, I hate saying the word proof text, but that's my argument for why all the nonsense being spewed around right now about Jews being fake Jews. Judah's in the land. Judah must be in the land for all the nations to gather against the house of Judah and the house of David. So this African only, European only nonsense that's being spewed these days, I'm sorry, I wouldn't bet my kingdom status on it, but I'm 99.999% positive that the house of Judah, remnants of the house of Judah, are in the land right now as we're winding down. They have to be there.
And that being said, it doesn't mean that there aren't fake Jews over there, because Revelation talks about them. However, to just broad swipe everybody as fake Jews, you can't do that, in my opinion. Yeah, there's real ones over there, just the same.
Well, and what's happening right now with this, we're starting to see anti-Judah. I don't like to use the term anti-Semitism, but you're starting to see anti-Judah rising nationally, and especially in the Hebrew uprooter and Messianic movement, who want to claim that all Jews are fake Jews and the synagogue of Satan, and it just brings division. I hate it. I hate DNA theology in all respects, whether it be British Israelitism, Filipino Israelitism. No, it's a thing. Native American Israelitism, African Israelitism. Like, what part about Yah scattered the tribes to all four corners of the earth is so hard to comprehend, and it wasn't the African slave trade 400 years ago.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think too, there's, turning the page a little bit here, when we look at current events, and there's always going to be current events to watch. But I'll tell you right now, man, things are happening, and it's not being covered in the news. In fact, I get this stuff. I don't even watch the news, never have for a long time. But I always have people send me stuff. Did you see this is going on? Did you see this is going on? And big things are taking place right now. And I think this is important because, like I said, I always watch certain times. Well, this is the time I watch. Second Passover is coming up. We're just, week and a half away now. 2 weeks away, I guess, from tonight. And when I hear what Russia is declaring, they're not, they don't send out empty words. And they're telling NATO, you send troops against us, we will nuke. They said nuke your decision headquarters. All of them. And I'm going, are the leaders of NATO even listening to what they're saying?
I think the people pulling, I call them the head puppet masters, because the puppet masters are the powers and principalities.
Yeah.
You have the most deceived people in the world would be the global elites, are the ones, that they know who they worship. They're Luciferians, they're Satanists, and they're pulling the strings of what we view as the world leaders. So the real power behind the government, and then they want to bring that left versus right, dark versus light, yin versus yang, thesis, antithesis to reach synthesis, and it's just all a big game for them. And what's funny is Yah's allowing it all to happen.
Yeah.
In other words, they're not going to do anything one day before he permits it and allows it.
Correct.
Just like Hamas did not attack until just so happened to be the last great day, the 8th day of the feast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, coincidence. And I'm in Israel, and my wife's really, really mad at me because I told her I thought something would happen, and that happened.
Right.
So, like you, I'm watching. I'm hoping. Well, that's weird. For the sake of others, and so more can start to have this understanding. I'm hoping nothing major happens, but if it does, it just means we're that one step closer to when it gets perfect. It's just going to get really, really, really ugly for a while until it gets perfect.
Yeah.
For you, those watching this show right now.
Yeah, it's going to get rough, and I don't know how. I wish I had more answers. Exactly. Every time I study and I talk with my friend and stuff, and in Canada, we just hash things out. And a lot of times we walk away with more questions than answers, that's for sure. We answer something, but that one answer creates 10 more questions, And
that's what I like about you, man. I really do. You're trying to understand it, and you haven't published a book and gotten locked into something.
No,
and when you have a past teaching and you've said, well, I think I was wrong then. You're willing to adjust and be a watchman. That's what we should be doing.
I think more of being a student. To me, the greatest teacher is the greatest student. One who's willing to learn is willing to teach. And when I make a teaching, and let it be known, I realize that I'm a teacher. I will be judged accordingly. Therefore, my judgment will be much stricter. But when I come forth, I don't think of myself as a teacher. I'm going, look what I found. That's why I try to present stuff. But you mentioned about writing books. I will never write a book. The only book that I would write would be why the Torah stands forever. Okay, and so. But anything else, as far as theories on this, these are just theories, and I've seen too many people. Well, I see too many people. They get a theory, they just get, if I can call it, tunnel vision with it, and which can be a good thing. I get it. The passion is there, and I appreciate the passion. Oh, please no, but sometimes our passion blinds us from truth around us that we don't want to see. That may tweak our understanding, but if we have to tweak our understanding, I mean, you got to tweak the book, and you can't tweak the book because it's already in black and white on a paper. And that's why I don't want to write a book, because I know that we're all searching and we're all needing one another. And whenever I make a teaching, I'm praying that even if I'm wrong, there could be something right in it that will spark a thought in somebody. And then they get the next part, and then they get the next, then they teach it, and it's like it's a progression of a snowball. We're getting closer and closer, and we're seeing it because it's all coming together. The pieces are all starting to fit. Yeah, we got this piece here that doesn't fit yet, and this over here, and conglomeration of pieces over here, but it's all starting to flow together. That's what I feel like we need to do. And unless we have that attitude of, I could be wrong, chances are you're wrong.
And that's again, I do believe in the 7-day redemptive plan, the 7,000-year plan. If we get to 2033, 34, and we're still kind of, me and you are talking, nothing major has happened. Again, I'm going to be either A, this is wrong, or B, our Roman calendar is really whacked out. One or the other.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I don't think you're going to get that far, but nonetheless,
that's my outside window.
There you go. Well,
I've always had a window. People don't like it, but instead of like Messiah 2030, had I produced it, which I was too lazy to do and too lazy to write the book. I was too lazy because I've been thinking about writing this book on the 7-day redemptive plan. Messiah 2030 did exactly what's been in my brain with like thousands of notes. and he did an excellent job on it. But the one thing, and I've told him, and we both know who it is, but when I said I would have at least put a question mark at the end.
Yeah.
At a minimum, I would have put a question mark at the end.
Right. Well, and like we said, I mean, I did the review on that. I believe the theory. I just differ with the timing as far as for sure. Now, it could be right, possibly, but there are other theories showing how it can happen other times. And this is one of the years I'm watching for things to happen. Now, but which takes us back to current events. You know, it was about a month and a half ago, maybe that long. I can't forget exact timing, but whenever Israel was talking about, you know, entering Rafah with troops, well, multiple other Islamic nations were saying, you do this, we're coming against you. And then we just see yesterday, they started putting troops on the ground in Rafah. And what do we see just today? We see Turkey come out and say, it's time to stop Israel. And it's either via, you know, agreements or by war. That was that they said. And so now it's like it's getting more real. You keep thinking it's going to slow down like it used to in the past, but it's just going to a boil extremely slow. And because before we talked before, and how it would heat up and then it goes down. It heat up, then it goes down. But it's like here lately, it's just heating up ever so slowly and not going down. Let's keep it here for a while and then knock it up a notch. And I'm not just talking in Israel. I'm talking regarding Russia, all these different things all around. Matter of fact, I just saw what was it was a country in Africa. I forgot which one it was. They called for Russian troops to come down and get rid of the American troops because they don't want America there anymore. So here, and forgive me, I can't think of the country it was. Here you have U.S. soldiers being confronted by Russian soldiers saying, it's time for you to leave. And no one's reporting on it. It's like, it's just huge. And so it's like, and that can go into the American dollar. When we look at what the American dollars, everyone is talking about these CBDCs, and it's about to come to pass. Go ahead, you can say something.
It's only a matter of when. Again, I don't know how long it would take them to pull the plug on the current system and do their great reset, but they're not hiding it. You know, I've still got a lot of personal friends who still think I'm a nut. They call me the great prophet, or I think I'm so know-it-all. And I'm like, no, guys, just on this issue, I love y'all, but you're ignorant. You know, you're not. No, and they want to get offended. I'm like, well, I'm ignorant on how to run a healthcare company. I'm ignorant on how to run a land clearing company. I'm a lawyer, and I'm ignorant on corporate counsel and international law for a car manufacturer. These are my friends.
Right.
They want to be insulted because I say they're ignorant, but they are. They're not educated on this. Mm-hmm. They don't pay attention. They're happy living their lives right now. Although a couple of them now are going, dude, all this crap you've been saying for like 6 or 7 years. Like a couple of them are privately saying, I think you might be right. I'm like, I said, maybe.
Right.
Time will tell.
Too. It's like we look at these things and we think, well, it can't happen until they do this, until they do that, until they do this. And you lay out this little timeline of how it has to work out.
Gotta have a 7-year covenant. Gotta have that one, Steve.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. Cool. Let's move on. So the whole point, though, is if you just have one good catastrophe, that's all you need. It's like, what's the saying? Never let a good catastrophe go to waste, is what they're saying is. And I'm telling you, I made a teaching not long ago called the Prophetic X Factor. And there are things that can just like pull the rug out from everybody's plan. And then boom, we're confronted with the end times right in front of our faces. And I'm telling you, it can happen. Now, how, when, that's yet to be seen. But my concern is that everyone is so convinced they're right here, they're right there. This is why I have so many teachings that, give these different perspectives and timing of scenarios. But I'll never paint it's this year, it's that year, whatever. I'm simply saying these are the times of the year. Every year we should be watching. And right now we're entering into a phase that I'm thinking, boy, it can go down real quick, real fast, right here at second Passover. And leading into, I have another teaching called As in the Days of Noah. And As in the Days of Noah talks about the second Passover time frame, and it leads into the 27th day of the second month. And as I was making that teaching, I was really thinking that day is the significance of it. However, it could have equally just be the 40th day in the counting to Shavuot. And the point in case here is we're in that time frame. We are not far away from seeing things happening, and we go, oh my gosh, this could be it.
And I will say this, that Curtis Reed from Donkey Speaks and I were talking, and we both said that this, you say you've been watching, for the past few years, you've been watching to see if anything would happen. Mm-hmm. This would be the first year. And again, this is based on my studies from ancient calendars, which I don't put too much stock in. But as far as Roman dates and locking them down, this would be the first year that I've thought that events could kick off. And that's why I've said numerous times, if we make it through Shavuot without anything major happening, then I think, until the fall, we can probably nothing major. I'm not saying there's not going to be some groundwork laid, mm-hmm. but just to your point, when events start to unfold, just like Yeshua's first coming, I forget the exact percentages, Steve, but maybe like 85 to 90% of the prophecies about Yeshua's first coming were fulfilled in the last week, mm-hmm. During this time period,
Yep.
So
Good point.
Obviously his birth was in Bethlehem. That was early. There's other things that were fulfilled, but the majority of the prophecies were fulfilled. And I believe at the very end of this age, that's when everything's going to steamroll and mushroom. And to your point, where we agree, I believe they're going to be fulfilled. They're going to be jam packed in between the spring feast and the fall feast. Mm-hmm. So, like literally in a Moedim year from Passover to the 8th great day. And when I say that 7 month or that 6.5 month, I guess it'd be 7.5 month time period,
right?
Plus 7 days. That I think there's going to be jam packed during that. And to your point earlier about the 150, I do find it. I think that fifth trumpet, I believe it's the fifth trumpet. And what if it were to end on a Yom Teruah? In other words, that it opens up or it starts blowing for those 5 months and it doesn't conclude until a Yom Teruah. To your point, it could be a Yom Kippurim. I'm more wiggly on that and not as dogmatic as some of my friends are.
Yeah,
it's got to be Yom Teruah. It has to be. You swayed me not to be dogmatic with your Shavuot teaching because there's a big old trumpet going on at Shavuot.
There is. So I'm still convinced in my heart. I'm still convinced in my heart that the new covenant and resurrection takes place on the day of. Well, take that back. I think the resurrection will take place the day before Shavuot, and because that's when you go back into the Exodus 24. That's when you have. It's the day before when you see the mountain on fire. You see the loud trumpet growing louder and longer. You see all the clouds. It's 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 16. It's taking place right there. He's explaining. So that could very easily happen the day before Shavuot. And then what they go into the next day for the marriage supper of the Lamb. I really believe that's going to happen.
On that third day, and again, those 2 days that they are told to get their garments clean, don't touch a woman. And again, the typology would be get out of bed with the harlot, don't touch this false mixture, syncretic religion. I believe there's a spiritual aspect to coming out of Babylon, which is, okay, time is short. Get rid of the leaven and all the mixture that we've learned because Yah hates that mixture. He hates it. And yet most of his people right now are still sort of in bed, they get out of the room, get out of the house,
right.
flee the spiritual aspect of it. And then, like you said, I believe it at some point in time, I believe we're going to end up potentially in ancient Ammon, Edom, and Moab, Batra, Gilead.
Basra. Yep. I have a teaching on that too.
So,
hey, I got a confession here. I forgot to have my computer plugged in, so I'm down to 12%. Do we want to hit Q&A from anybody?
We got a few. I did start this one. Steve, Islamic eschatology states that their Messiah will bring out the ark. Do you think he may get it before Jim Barfield or others do?
Great question. I'm not sure. I've discussed this with my other friend. I've discussed it from Canada. We go back and forth in different scenarios and how it could happen. I do believe that you can watch my teaching called The Assyrian. That teaching goes into how I think the Islamic perspective comes in, and he brings it into sacrifices, and that's how people will think that. I don't think that will happen by way of them finding the ark. I do think that either Yahweh will reveal it by way of a rocket opening the cave, earthquake maybe, or just Judah finds it per se, Israel. And what happens there, I don't know, but I struggle thinking that Islamic views that they find it. That's just my current thought.
And that was to Steve, but the Islamic eschatology is sort of like Bizarro world, the upside down world, or a mirror of what Revelation teaches, but just twisted and bastardized on its head.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying.
Yeah, in other words, the enemy knows scripture, and so I think in Islamic eschatology, it's used a lot of truth, but it's like the reverse mirror image of the true eschatology. So I can see how they're going to mesh together, and people can be deceived,
right?
Because they do have Jesus. I believe their Jesus might be the false prophet. And
right.
Their Mahdi might be what most people call the Antichrist, which that just makes me, that's like nails on the chalkboard now to me. That the beast, the beast. So,
yeah.
Let me see if I can find another question.
Sounds good. I hate to carry this, but I'm ready to go dead.
No problem, man. Well, I appreciate it. We'll have to do it again. Maybe do it, every few months. So I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, brother. It's been great.
All right. Shalom. And everybody, y'all have a blessed evening. Bye-bye.
Shalom.